This podcast is brought to you by the Heldridge Hotel, New Brunswick's only 4-star hotel and a preferred hotel of Rutgers football fans. The Heldridge helps you make the most of your game day weekend, providing premium accommodations in the cultural heart of downtown New Brunswick. Restaurants, bars, theaters, parks, museums, and more are only steps away. Whether you're traveling alone or with a large group, book your stay at the Heldridge and make the most of your game day weekend. Visit theheldridge.com today.
Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Little groggy here. I'm going to start at this point, fellas. We usually record this on Monday. It is not Sunday morning because we have I have the Giants game today. Brian and I are flying to Las Vegas with the basketball team tomorrow on Monday for that tournament. So this is a different time for us to record, and I can honestly say that I am operating on like 5 hours sleep because I lost sleep over this game last night. Like, this is how bad this 38-31 loss to Illinois was. That, I mean, and again, like, I can't emphasize this enough. I get paid the same if you lose. I cover a lot of things. I've done this for 26 years. Typically, the next morning, there are times when my wife's like, "Who won the game last night?" I'm like, "Who won the game last night?" Like, honestly, this is my job. But this thing impacted me in a way that I was still so. When I went to bed, and then I woke up, and the first thing I thought was like, I iced the kicker. Like, that's the first thing I thought of at 6 a.m. this morning. Like, I don't like. I just can't. I feel so bad for Rutgers fans. This is your life. This is what you deal with. I don't know. How are you guys feeling about it today? Maybe you've got a better perspective than I do.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I wrote this morning just kind of where this ranks amongst the most painful losses Rutgers has suffered under Rutgers football in the past century. I kind of narrowed the scope because if we talked about Rutgers sports over the 150-year history, I would have written a 10,000-word book. Anyway, that's actually kind of small book. But I would say that this is the most visceral loss I can remember Rutgers football having, and the most visceral loss a Rutgers team has suffered since the Iowa Joe Wieskamp corner 3 off the backboard miracle, because in the same way, this was a game I could not fathom Rutgers losing in that last second situation, right? Mm-hmm. I was watching it, as I said in our post-game video, from the stands because I wanted to get a video of the after-game reaction and everyone kind of going crazy. I was really, really confused when Illinois brought their offense back out on the field. And then I was even more confused when they scored the touchdown. And I keep going back to the same question, Steve. Why did he ice the kicker? I know he said it was about a feel thing. There's no hard and fast rule. It's how he feels. I got to say, if that's the truth, I mean, his feelings, his gut is completely out of whack to make that decision.
Right. Yeah.
I just keep coming back to the sense of senior day and how this was going to be a special day, and all these guys that came to Rutgers for this leap of faith legacy, guys like Kyle Monungai, Tareem Powell, everything was right there within grasp. And then the storybook ending kind of just got ripped out in the most devastating way possible. And that's just like a gut punch that those guys are never going to get over. Maybe who knows? Right. But it just, hearing them talk after the game, it was just devastating, and you got to feel for them. So I don't know. Those are the guys I'm thinking about this morning.
Yeah. Right. And we'll break it down because there are 3 areas I think that we need to talk about. And the first one, Brian, is the ice the kicker thing. And I am always very aware and cognizant of the idea that sometimes we do focus too much on the results with things. And there have been times this season, I think back to it, I got all worked up about Rutgers going for 2 points or too early against UCLA. A couple of days later, I'm like, you know what? was doing that. Like that, it was clearly they got the 2-point conversion. I wouldn't have thought of it again. I get it. This one, I really do not believe is that. And because I come back to this, like, and Greg Schiano's first answer to that question was sort of a like, well, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Like, sometimes I call heads, sometimes I call tails. Like sometimes I play black, sometimes I play red. Like, no, they're not equal things. Like sometimes it's a 35-yard field goal with a really good kicker on a 7-degree sunny day. And sometimes it's 58 yards with swirling winds. And you said it, Brian, like if it is a feel thing and you're going for the feel, well, like the kickoff before the drive that Rutgers scored on was this rolled out of bounds because it's got stuck up in the wind and it was going in that direction. Greg Schiano's standing there. He saw that happen. Like I just, there's a million things. Brett Bielema did him a big favor by sending his kicker out there. And then, I mean, just to make him crazier, made it seem like, well, I knew he was going to call timeout and ice the kicker. But if he didn't call timeout and ice the kicker, well, that's it. Greg made that decision for you. You're kicking the field goal now, Brett. This is outside of your control. I just come back to game situational feel thing. And it's just a million examples of stuff like this over the 16 years Greg Schiano's coached that I think about. I'm like, I don't know. What were you doing? What were you doing?
Look, I think in a vacuum, if you say that a team has to kick a 58-yard field goal in the wind in a moving operation because they have no timeouts to win the game, you would take that 100 times out of 100, right? It was the perfect situation. And if the kid makes it, you shake his hand, you tip your cap, and you say, congratulations on making one of the ballsiest kicks I have ever seen in my life.
No one is saying, oh, you should ice the kicker. Right. Exactly.
Right.
People would say that, but
you think so? I don't
absolutely,
know. I mean,
it's just a hindsight game. But either way, Brian's right. It would have just been an incredible kick and an incredible moment for Illinois. And you kind of go down saying, we did everything we can do.
Right. We talk about the actual issue or the bigger issue here, which we'll talk about later in the pod, which is the defense was absolutely shredded in the second half to a degree that they were getting shredded before the bye week. But anyway, there's one data point I could point to that would kind of explain the decision. The kid had hit a 59-yarder, earlier this season, and this was a 58-yarder, but it wasn't in a 15-mile-an-hour wind, 34-mile-an-hour gusts. I was watching the Peacock replay this morning, and a couple plays earlier, when Altmaier misses a deep pass, the commentator saying some of his passes have been affected by the wind. That one was clearly held back by the wind. It was towards the Rutgers sideline. They saw it, right? They're on the field. They felt it. I was in the stands. I felt it. They looked at the flag. You look at the flags on the poles. You look at the American flag behind the stadium. It's swirling.
Right.
Look, you have 12 seconds to make the decision. Sure. But I think this is going to be a decision. Greg didn't let it on. And I believe him in his press conference, but I got to think that this morning, next week, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, he's going to be kicking himself, asking himself, why the hell did I take that time out? I just can't, as much as I understand his, it's not the result, it's the decision mindset. This is going to be one that's going to stick in his craw. I have to believe for the rest of his life.
Yeah, you would think so. Look what it did to the program. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It negated a really important win. Will he, and here's a question, will he second guess the next decision that we talked about? And I thought at the time, and I had forgotten the rule. You can't call back-to-back timeouts in college football anymore. But I thought at the time Rutgers was ill prepared for this decision that Brett Bielema made in the moment, sending the offense back on the field. It looked like just, one of those clown car substitutions with the defense. Rutgers decided to blitz in that situation. And at first blush, my first reaction to that was, okay, like I get it. That's, I've seen the opposite. I've certainly seen what happens when you don't, and you send three guys and your secondary gets picked off, and all of a sudden, I get it. My problem is waking up this morning and looking at that closer and then seeing the personnel on the field. And Rutgers has in its backfield, I don't even name the kid, he's a college football player, Kevin Levy. He's a true freshman. He made one tackle in his entire career because of all the injuries, right? I guess Eric Rogers is, I don't know which, I assume it's Eric Rogers. So all this stuff that happened, this is the guy, when the pass is caught, who's there has to make the tackle. And then instead of having a couple of guys standing back, to make sure, in that situation we have guys way back, you have him alone, sort of on an island. And again, there's 4 guys around him. Someone should have made the tackle. I understand. But watching that now, is that just an awareness, a lack of awareness about your personnel when you call that blitz?
Absolutely. And I think additionally, what you saw too is they send the linebackers and then you have a defensive lineman dropping into coverage.
I didn't see that. Wow.
Yeah. Like go back and look at it. I forget exactly who it was, but he was playing that middle zone where Pat
Jordan
Bryant
Walker?
just
Jordan Walker.
was Jordan Walker. That makes sense. And he just looks completely lost, right? Like, he's not there to defend one of the best receivers in the conference. And due to some great reporting by the Associated Press, Pat Bryant after the game said the point of the play was for him to get the first down and go down, for them to have maybe a miracle spike, right? But he just saw an opportunity to beat that defender and take it to the end zone, and that's what he did. So really, I think the play call was kind of wild.
Right? Would he have had time to go down and take that? I wonder if he had time.
Clock stops on a first down. You get up there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe spike it with a second or two, make more makeable kick. Yeah. And really the explanation from Schiano after the game was, well, we didn't want to go into prevent to give him that situation. Right. But that's exactly what happened anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get the aggressive play call to try to knock him out and just end the game.
Wild.
But it just unfolded in the worst way possible.
It almost worked. Aaron Lewis was half a second away from getting a second sack on that drive and ending the game. And Altmaier just held on just long enough to find Bryant wide open. There's other things coming back to me that there's so much happening that every time we're talking about this, new things are coming to my mind. Greg said he called a timeout because he wanted to prepare for a fake field goal or something. It's 4th and 13. They're going to convert a 4th and 13 with 14 seconds left and no timeouts.
With your kicker and your holder. Yeah. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's so that made no sense to me. And if you're preparing for them to go for it on 4th down, why would you call a timeout and give them a chance to do that when they're kicking a 58-yard field goal into the wind? I don't know if that's actually what he was calling the timeout for, if that's just a post justification. Either way, it doesn't make sense. On the play, like I said, Aaron Lewis was half a second for making it look like a brilliant decision. But once Pat Bryant gets the ball, Bo Mascow looked like he followed the wrong guy because him and Robert Longerbeam both went to the outside guy and let Pat Bryant open. Shaquan Loyal, trying to react, is one step in the wrong direction. He falls over and has no chance of making the tackle. And then Kevin Levy is on an island in space against one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten, who had 197 receiving yards and a touchdown against Rutgers. 197. Rutgers has had quarterbacks throw for less yards in a game than this kid has had against them in that game. So everything went wrong that could possibly go wrong. To your point, like Bo Mascow is a redshirt freshman who's had a decent season but had a rough game. And, everything just fell apart. But
yeah, Kevin Levy's got one tackle. He's a true freshman, 4-star kid, probably the future of the program at that position in a couple of years.
They love his potential. Love his potential. Yeah, he's just not there. It's hard to blame him because it's a tough situation to be in. And Rutgers was down to, again, Kevin Levy, who wouldn't be playing if Eric Rogers hadn't gotten knocked out of the game. I think in the third quarter, he was trying to cover somebody, had some friendly fire, got hurt. It's just and Brett Bielema acknowledged they said the play's called church. Trying to get out of bounds, but Pat Bryant saw the space and scored the touchdown. And then he, I don't know if you guys saw this, so he goes into the end zone right on the side where I'm at, and then some Rutgers fans chirping at him, and he's yelling at the Rutgers fan, and then he goes to the bench, and the peacock shows him pointing to the crowd and like shooting a fake gun.
No. I didn't see that. Wow. Yeesh.
Really, really just adding insult to injury.
The other thing about this, and we didn't talk about it all, and as it unfolded in real time, Pat, we're in the press box. Brian, you'd left at this point. They could have taken more time off the clock, and I guess this comes back to me. And it wasn't. You can say it's the second guess. It really wasn't the second guess, Pat. You are my witness. I'm sitting up there looking at it. They got 3 timeouts. There's a minute and a half left. They should run the ball here. Like I said that a couple of times. You did say that.
Can you confirm?
I was surprised they didn't run the ball. But I think, and this is a loyal podcast listener sent this in. It goes beyond that. Like if you look at the play that Kyle Monangai scored, a nice play, a really well designed play. He hadn't caught a touchdown pass in the season, I guess. They snapped the ball with like 30 seconds on the play clock, with the clock running. And I get it. Like, you're Rutgers, you can't say, well, gee, I mean, they have trouble scoring. This is not a pro offense. This is not Pat Mahomes. But I do cover a lot of pro games now, and I've seen this situation unfold so many times that like pro teams, the clock management people, they don't think about the clock if they have 3 timeouts until there's like 50, 45 seconds left. Like they don't even acknowledge it. Like they're huddling. Right? You know what I'm talking about? They're like taking their sweet time, especially in that side of the field. There was all kinds of time when you have 3 timeouts to run any number of plays. You're at the 13-yard line. I mean, you could honestly, and it's not a second guess. I was saying it at the time. Just, I don't know. Clock management was bad there. They could have given it to a situation where Illinois would have taken over with 30 seconds left, and then it's a different story.
My counter argument in the moment, and I'll bring it up again, was Rutgers is not a quick striking offense. And all game long, every time they scored, it was a 12, 13, 16 play drive. For them to score on that drive, think about what Ethan Kaliakmanis did with his legs on that do or die 4th down run, scramble. Absolutely. Incredible. Yep. I just think that was a fuel moment. And right, like, you have Mononga gets wide open. That's never going to happen.
I just think from the 13-yard line, though, Pat, you could have run with 3 timeouts and a minute 30. You couldn't have run. You had to get the first down. I mean, that situation, you can't run 12 plays there. Right?
You're right. You're right. Listen, but I just think at the end of the day, the energy was so high, the momentum was so high. Yeah. They just took what was available. Right. And at the end of the day, like, they scored the touchdown. I don't know.
Right. I get it.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I'm torn, but I thought scoring, your goal is to score, and you got to score. Right. The only other scenario is if Monongai goes down at the 1-yard line, right? And then they get stopped. What are you going to say then?
I know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. I was leaning more towards your side, Pat. Like, this, how many times have we seen this Rutgers offense not pull through? Right? Like, they scored the touchdown, and the worst case scenario would be exactly that. Either they run the ball, kill the clock, and then they end up running out of time, or they stop themselves at the 1, and then they get stuffed, and then you say, why didn't they just score the touchdown when they had the chance?
Yeah, you talk about like unforgivable scenarios. That would have been 100 times worse than what happened.
I'm not talking about stopping. I guess I say this again. I'm not talking about stopping at the 1. I'm talking about snapping the ball with 30 seconds left on the clock.
That I agree with. That specific play, they should have killed 20 seconds, 30 seconds, right? Like, force Illinois to use one of their timeouts. If anything, like that, I totally agree with. And that was right after an Illinois player was down on the ground for a long time. But I'm assuming they knew the clock was running because they could look up and because the referees do the signal, right? So,
and it does take away, Pat, and you mentioned it. Like, talk about just a gutsy, ballsy drive by Ethan Kaliakmanis on that end of the game. They were dead in the water 3 times, scrambling, running for his life. Throwing his body around. It was just really impressive what he did. And I guess I come back to too, like, that play was the perfect play for Rutgers to win. Throwing the pass to Kyle, the heart and soul of this program, for him to catch it, for him to score and score in a nice run, like a Kyle Monangai play. It was just like, here you go. I mean, that was going to be the moment. Yeah, I think, and we're not talking about what the offense did because of what happened at the end.
100%. It was the perfect script to send the face of this program off of like an iconic moment. Not even to mention what you just said about Kaliakmanis and the way that he led that drive. Because you think about Rutgers would, in the history of Rutgers, it would be very Rutgers-like to not come down and score after Illinois put together that other drive to march down the field, methodically take the ball, and then Altmaier pulls it, runs. In most Rutgers scenarios, the go-ahead touchdown drive never happens. Kaliakmanis and those guys made it happen, and that's that's another huge shame of this game.
Yeah. So one other, and this is again, not to just pile on all the bad shit, but we got more. I spent the second quarter with a very nice man. John Drawdy was his name. He's a scout for the Citrus Bowl. And he just couldn't have been. He was like the happiest person in the world. He come here. This is his first time scouting a game. He's never been to New Jersey, never been to SHI Stadium. People treated him like he was, wandering around with a shopping bag full of free Springsteen tickets. Essentially, I mean, he was like the most popular. Went to all the tailgates. Met Jonathan Holloway, and I was on the field before the game. Says to Jimmy Grill, the great SID for Rutgers, he says, "Can I take a picture with Greg Schiano?" And like my reaction when he told me the story, because he did. Greg, no surprise, Greg took the 15 seconds to stop and say hi to the Citrus Bowl scout before the game and pose for a photo. I thought to myself, you should have asked for more than that. Like, hey, coach, can I have your car? Can I break the huddle? Like, there's other things you could have. Of course, he's going to talk to the Citrus Bowl. It's just a great scene. And so, I mean, he didn't, and to be clear, like, he wasn't making the decision on who's going to get in the bowl game. That happens at a higher level. It happens. I mean, believe me, it's like, this is not his call. He made it clear a million times, but it was pretty clear to me that he was not just, faking it, enthusiastic about the idea of Rutgers at 8-4 coming to Orlando for the first time, 50,000 graduates from Rutgers in the Florida area, the best bowl game ever. Like, I mean, and wasn't hiding it. Like, I really do believe that 8-4 Rutgers was in the driver's seat, depending on what happened. I get it. If the playoff shakes out in India, I guess not that nice. I understand that. But beyond that, if that didn't happen, that was sitting right there, man. That to me is what makes this reminds me of those bad losses, like the not bad loss, but the gutting loss at West Virginia, where you're sitting there, you're going to the Orange Bowl, you're going to this massive game. The Louisville loss, that was another loss where you're going to a BCS game. Like every one of these Rutgers losses, and Brian, you chronicled them this morning on the website. I don't know if anybody could possibly read that as a Rutgers fan without wanting to set yourself on fire. I mean, like, every one of these gutting losses has one of these backdrops where the wind takes you someplace special. And that's another thing. You're just like, oy.
John was going to walk into his next Citrus Bowl meeting and pound the table and say, the Scarlet Knights need to be in Orlando. And now he has with
his little vest and his Citrus Bowl iron-on patch on it. It was just so excited.
He might have walked to the meeting from Piscataway. He was so excited to be around, but now he can't. He has no leverage to do that. And yeah, I mean, like, it is actually incredible how many times Rutgers has been in a position where they could get a win to put themselves in position to have a great bowl game. I mean, the Kent State loss in 2012, the you mentioned the Louisville loss, the West Virginia loss, like these things that just pile up. Rutgers would have passed Illinois on the pecking order of the bowl games. I have to think.
Oh yeah, no question.
They both be 7-3. Rutgers has, they both have easy games to end the season. Rutgers could certainly beat Michigan State. Illinois is going to beat Purdue. And now Rutgers is kind of, they're going to finish at best 7-5 without really a marquee win. What's their best win? Minnesota, right? And
Washington, no, I guess Minnesota at this point. Yeah,
Minnesota, okay. Washington 6-5,
yeah.
And they're no signature road win. Their road win is against the 4-7 Maryland team, and they're going to be in the mush with much bigger brand names. Nebraska has exceeded them easily. Nebraska will go to whatever bowl game they want. People will sell their soul to have Nebraska at their bowl game. Wisconsin, Minnesota will probably leapfrog Rutgers. Illinois clearly is ahead of Rutgers. Iowa is ahead of Rutgers. Michigan, good Lord, Michigan is way ahead of Rutgers, obviously. Michigan and Nebraska are bad blue bloods who will sell so many tickets and eyeballs. We were talking about the Citrus Bowl. We were talking about the ReliQuest Bowl, maybe Music City, Duke's Mayo Bowl. I don't see. I mean, Pat, you did a deeper dive on this than I did, but I just don't see Rutgers landing in any of those. I think it's really Detroit, Phoenix, or maybe you luck out by being so bad that you go to Boca Raton.
Yeah, the scenario is just you're there at the Citrus Bowl, right? It's almost a play-in game. This was almost a play-in game for the Citrus Bowl, right? If you want to go through the scenarios. Do we want to?
Yes.
All right.
I would love to.
All right.
Got nothing but time here.
Nothing but time. Let's start at the top, right? It's an all trickle down effect. So the big question is, does Indiana get into the college football playoff? If no, they're going to go to the Citrus Bowl, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's a no-brainer.
It feels like it feels like a yes at this point to that question.
It would be hard to keep a team like that.
Who are you going to
out,
put
right?
in? Who are you going to put in? Yeah.
Right. So then it just becomes, all right, the next best team that doesn't make the playoff from the Big Ten is gonna be Illinois. They basically solidified that with the win at Rutgers. They'll have to take care of business against Northwestern next week, but you would think that's kind of gonna happen. So Illinois is gonna finish 9-3, clinch a spot in the Citrus Bowl. Then 8-4 Iowa. If they beat Nebraska, huge game there. So I boil it down to 3 key games: Nebraska at Iowa, Minnesota at Wisconsin, and of course the game Michigan at Ohio State. Now, why is Michigan at Ohio State important? Right? You look at that and you say, "Oh, Ohio State's going to win that game." It's a rivalry game, and it means even with a loss, Michigan's still going to be 6-6, and I would think a higher selection than Rutgers at 7-5 if Rutgers beats. So, I don't know. It's not looking good. I thought even the way this would shake out, even if Rutgers lost to Illinois, those games, Duke's Mayo, Music City Bowl would be in play. I think it's 75% Detroit Bowl or Rate Bowl, 25% elsewhere, if I had to guess.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, without knowing, it sounds about right. Yeah.
And the elsewhere isn't like a better bowl. It's like the Armed Forces Bowl or the Boca Raton Bowl or there are.
I'm not going to rule it out at 7-5, Charlotte. I'm not going to completely rule that out at this point.
So there are the top 4 bowls outside of the CFP are the Citrus Bowl, ReliaQuest, Duke's Mayo, and Music City. Right? I can give you, no matter what happens with Indiana, 4 teams that are in better position than Rutgers or more attractive bowl games. You got Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan. Those 4 teams are taking those 4 spots, and especially more so if Indiana comes in. I just see no scenario where Rutgers beats out, even at 7-5, any of those teams for those bowl slots. I mean, I just can't justify that, right?
Yeah, the only thing worth mentioning too, people that got excited for the Pinstripe Bowl last year had a great time. We'll do the Pinstripe Bowl again, but there's a variety clause that the same team can't play in the same bowl game in consecutive years, so Rutgers cannot play at the Pinstripe Bowl. Maybe that's a great landing spot for 6-6 Michigan, though. That might be my only counter argument that Rutgers. They
would love to. Oh, are you kidding me? Michigan.
I cannot
Randy
imagine.
Levine and the Yankees would love to have Michigan. Yes.
There's just no shot Michigan falls that far down the pecking order. There's just no shot. I mean, the ReliaQuest Bowl will sweep them up. Duke's Mayo will sweep them up. Music City would sweep them up. Anybody would sweep them up.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I see your point. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. It's tough. I just hope, and the Rate Bowl, at least there's some symmetry there. Rutgers' first bowl game under Greg Schiano was at it's in Phoenix. So at least there's something. I don't know. It's warm. Trying, folks. It's not Detroit, but it's the day after Christmas, and it's just tough. It's a tough travel. I don't know how many fans can get there. If you're going to willing to nuke Christmas and you're going to fly to Phoenix, which is far away, I just can't imagine that would be an attractive game for fans. Detroit's also the day after Christmas. Rutgers has been there before. Yeah, it's grim.
This is not going to factor into anyone's decision making, but I think if you want to avoid Detroit, you lose the game to Michigan State because Michigan State would be a shoo-in for Detroit. So you might want to tank it, honestly, like the NFL style. You want to get a better draft pick, you get a better bowl game.
Imagine, holy cow! Oh man,
it's a great point. It's a great point.
Again, I don't think Greg Schiano's calculating that. I don't think he really cares where he's spending the bowl game as long as they go to a bowl game. But just something to think about when you're for fans rooting interest on Saturday. That's something to keep in the back of your mind.
Man. All right. Do we want to answer some questions? I put it out really late on the Discord, which of course was, just on fire after the loss. Social media, just an absolute disaster. People, I mean, it was just bloody. My email, holy crap, my email inbox was just, and some people who've been around a long time anyway, let me go back as I trying to look at this. I guess people are asking already, like any potential transfer flight risks. And I guess it's really too early to start playing that game. I will say this, like Rutgers has some players it really has to protect in a meaningful way now. Ian Strong is the first one that pops to mind. Early in that game, he looks like he is an NFL receiver or emerging to that level now where he's open a lot. He makes a lot of catches. They had a lot of drop passes in that game, but I think most of them, again, were Dymere Miller and Duff dropped a couple that would have changed his game significantly. But, there are guys that they're going to have to protect, certainly on this roster.
Yeah, he's definitely at the top of the list. Dariel Jabome has had a breakout season at linebacker. He could be an attractive candidate, right? If he's willing to look for a potentially better situation. I think he's emerged as a really high level player too.
Yep.
Ethan Caligman obviously he's as tied to Rutgers as possible, but he's played himself into like a very important returning player on this roster too, right? You got to keep him. The whole foundation of this team for next season revolves around him.
Yep. And he'll be a graduate, so he can transfer. I don't think he will. To be clear, I really don't think he will. Yeah. I do think this offseason will be a lot less. There's less senior guys who may or may not come back for one more year. Less proven guys, right? Like that's kind of the benefit of having a senior heavy class. Is most of these guys are going to graduate, and you're kind of building new without worrying about flight risks. I would agree that Ian Strong is 1, 2, and 3 on that list, and that's I have a hard time thinking of anyone else who's really stood out that you're worried about getting poached.
Right. Yeah. Good question from D Breezy on the Discord. I feel like Shiano calling the timeout shows he's stuck in his own old ways. Where is Shiano adapted for the modern college game, and where does he still do things in an old school way? And I will say this, like this is how, and Greg, sometimes when he says this, he looks at me as the guy that's the guy who's been here for all of this shit. And he looks at me like, I do that. And he does this thing. Like he's done it. And he goes up to the ref and he stands there with this expression on his face. I might do it. I might not do it. Like he's got this thing he does. And it's just how he does it. And I don't know. I think Greg has adapted in a lot of ways. I think we make a list. I think we can make a list of more things he's adapted on than he hasn't. I do wonder, like, and someone else asked this on Discord, does Shiano need to hire an assistant head coach or someone to help him at this point with the game day decisions? He'll never do it. He will never admit that he's getting these wrong. He will never do it. But I do wonder about that. Is there some world where someone will walk up to him in that situation, tap him on the back and say, let him kick? Like some trusted sage, 80-year-old football guru with a beard who can come down and say, don't call the timeout. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
isn't that why Rutgers is paying Joe Susan and Bob Frazier hundreds of thousands of dollars? I mean, what else are they doing?
Like maybe they've tried. Maybe this is something that he's not.
He also has a son. I believe it's Joe with the binder with all the analytics and the math next to him during the games. Yeah. Right. So again, the question is the matter of will he listen? And I don't know what they're talking about on the sidelines, right? But clearly, the way Shiano addressed this in the press conference, and a couple of people have mentioned this, is like he did not acknowledge that it was the wrong decision.
He did not think it was the wrong. He did not think it was the wrong decision. That's why he didn't acknowledge it was the wrong decision. That's my takeaway. Yeah,
sure. But it's like every decision is you make the decision and it either works or it doesn't. But it's never a right or wrong decision, right? It's always just a decision. So I think that kind of impedes the idea that someone would be there to kind of help him. But I don't think that's the answer. I mean, to answer the original question of how he's adapted, I'd just say like he's clearly taking on the NIL aspect and transfer portal and acknowledging that that's an important part of college football these days. He hasn't had much success as far as garnering the payroll because he hasn't had much help from administration and he's working with the Rutgers fan base after all. But I think he's trying to adapt there. As far as not adapting, I mean, they don't exactly play a modern offense, and he still clings onto this idea that games are lost and not won, and he does not want Rutgers to lose games. He would rather, not commit a fumble than risk, a deep throw that's maybe an interception. I hope I'm making sense with this.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. I will say, like, we've hammered Shiano on clock management a lot this season and things like that. But until this crazy end of game situation and blunder on the timeout, I thought he did a pretty decent job the last couple games.
Yeah, last week certainly. No
last
question.
week was, we said at Maryland, was probably one of his best performances from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he has gotten better. Obviously, when something like this happens, it blurs everything. But in terms of how he's adapted, I think he's become the CEO of the program, as we've said. Right now, he's turned the defense over to Harris Simiak. He trusts Kirk Shiraka to do his job, and I think he's made himself more available in other areas.
Right. I'm looking for this one. I'm looking for this one comment, and I can't find it. But it was to the effect of, what the hell do you guys expect? And I got that a couple of times. Like I got that from a couple of people who have been around the program for a long time. Was like, you know what? We got a chance to win 7 games. I don't know. This is like, that's a few years ago. We would have killed someone for, when these games weren't competitive. This is modern college football now. We're outspent. We're outmanned. We're outnumbered, outplanned. Sorry, little Hamilton disc. That kids would appreciate that. Yeah. So I let's talk about that sentiment. Are we overreact? Like, if you had you handed us the list of results at the beginning of the year, assuming they beat Michigan State, and showed us this without seeing any of it, if we had just gotten handed this and said, oh, okay, would we be reacting? In the big picture, is 7-5 about the best you're going to hope for?
If it is, pack up the program, send them back to the Ivy League, or play FCS, or keep it a club football program. If you're going to accept 7-5, playing the second or the easiest schedule in the Big Ten, having a game where you literally are one play away from beating a number 24 team in the country, where you probably should beat UCLA, flying 3 time zones away and playing noon as a West Coast team. If you can't beat Nebraska on the road in a game that's 14-7, if you think all that is just acceptable and, it's the way it goes, then don't even bother having a football program. I think it would be that's disrespectful. That's loser mentality. Like that's even worse than some of the getting mad about Rutgers losing this game. That's acting like Rutgers has no chance, no hope. Why even bother? Like that's what the Rutgers, what is it? Rutgers 1,000, Rutgers 500, whatever the professors that wanted to abolish the program. That's the stuff they say. What is this? Like Rutgers should have won that game. To say that they should be satisfied with 7-5 to me is a massive insult on the program, and anyone who really thinks that. I'm honestly getting upset at that sentiment, to be honest with you.
I don't know. I saw it on social media. Did you not, Pat? Did you get a sense of this too?
Absolutely. And the MO of it is this, right? It's so within grasp. You're right. Every time it's so close, and yet so far at the same time. Like a couple years ago, you would sign up for this any day, to show up at the stadium, play any team, and be in the game and be there. Absolutely. But when you have this group of players, this schedule, and everything is at your fingertips, it makes it so much more painful and so much more like mind numbing that, okay, we're going to settle for this now. No, Brian's right. This was the year to make a big jump. And at the end of the day, it's going to end up being just another season, right? It's just going to be another bowl game. And for these guys that came back, laid it all on the line, played through injuries, like it's disrespectful to them to have that loser mentality.
Well, let's flip it then. Is it the ceiling for this coach?
That's the question everyone's asking. Right? I don't know. Is it? I mean, he went past this a couple times. 2006, he had 9 wins in 2009, I believe, 2011. He's gotten better than this.
Different world. Right.
Different world, sure. But I don't know. I honestly can't answer that. But I think, like, if we're beyond the point where this program can look back at 2016 and say, oh, it used to be really bad. Do you want to go back to those days? Like,
right. Yeah.
It's possible to be, just because things were worse doesn't mean it's not possible for it to get better. Indy freaking Anna, and I know we keep going back to them, has the most losses of any Division I team. by a wide margin. They sucked more than most teams have ever sucked for 70 years. And now they are pissed that they got demolished by the number 2 team in the country on the road, right? Like these things are possible, okay?
Yes.
And is it the ceiling for Shiano? I don't know. Again, I think if 06 didn't happen, that conversation would have a lot more strength. You could say 06 was a one season wonder. That's certainly seeming more and more likely with every passing season, especially when, let's face it, they blew this season. They blew a golden opportunity to win 9 games this season.
Yeah.
I don't think it's impossible that something like that happens in the future, but you're only going to have opportunities like you had this year once every, unless the NIL war chest suddenly gets bigger, you're only going to have this once every 5 years or so at best.
I say this, Brian, because you tweeted out a column I wrote, was it 12 years ago when they lost to that West Virginia game? 2011, so 13 years ago. And it's like the same freaking column. Like it was 2 things. One, an existential crisis. Like, oh, gee, you've been doing this for your entire life, covering these games, covering these losses. What are you throwing away? You only get one trip around this universe, dude. But 2, the second point being like, it's always something. Like we've just been here, we've just banged our head against the wall a million times. And I don't know. Like I don't know what the answer is, because certainly we've seen what other people have done with this program, and it's been an unmitigated disaster twice in the last, there's a reason why everyone, a lot of people, it's not everybody, but a lot of people were screaming to bring him back, because at least I knew that we'd get to this point. We'd get to this point again where, okay, the games are competitive and the program's not a laughing stock and you have a chance. I think the problem is I am having a hard time right now seeing beyond this point. And that's a feeling I've had a bunch. And every single time I think, well, that's right. I forgot. Like it just shifts back to, we're stuck here, right? And it comes back. It's happened a bunch of times. And that's certainly crystal clear feeling I had after that loss. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, on a similar point, we keep talking about 7-5. Would it be, successful? What if they lose to Michigan State and go 6-6, have the same exact record as they had last year?
Oh, I'm interested. Have you seen that line yet? I mean, I'm not. Michigan State's no good, but the way this team after that loss, the way it's banged up, I'm not
banged up. And Michigan State's playing for a bowl game.
Yeah, they're not. I'm at home. Yeah, believe me, I'm thinking hard about who I'm going to pick there.
If you go 6-6 with this team, with this schedule, with those expectations, abject failure. I think same spot as last year. With when you had a much worse quarterback. I thought what was interesting about this game was it was the antithesis of last year. Last year, when you're playing better teams, Rutgers was in it the whole time because its defense was just holding things together. And all the offense had to do was just get one more score, just move the ball a little bit, get in the end zone one time, and they just couldn't do it. This week, Rutgers was moving the ball. Ethan Kaliakmanis and the offense were looking great for long stretches of this game, making clutch plays, scoring game-winning touchdowns with a minute to play. But the defense could not get one damn stop. They gave up a touchdown on the last 4 drives of the game. And let me run this through for you guys. I have this written down. I believe this was the drive after the Ethan Kaliakmanis fumble. Illinois is facing a 3rd and 9 at the Rutgers 30. 3rd and 9. Pat Bryant gets a 26-yard reception. First down, the next play, Illinois scores a touchdown. Rutgers kills 6 minutes of clock and scores a touchdown. The offense does its job in every way possible. The next play, Rutgers has Illinois in a 3rd and 7 at their own 27-yard line, right where you want them. Perfect spot. 2 of your veteran safeties, Desmond Igbinosun and Shaquan Loyal, get absolutely demolished. Beat. Pat Bryant gets 64 yards, flips the field. 2 plays later, Illinois scores a touchdown. Rutgers, on the next drive, has Illinois in a 2nd and 26. 2nd and 26. What happens? Kevin Levy, true freshman, who's playing in the game because Eric Rogers is hurt, holding penalty, free first down, Illinois scores a touchdown 6 plays later. Of course, Rutgers has Illinois about to face a 3rd and 10 on that last fateful drive. Robert Longerbeam, your veteran quarterback, commits a pass interference, gives Illinois a free first down.
Not a great call, but anyway, go ahead. Yeah, keep going.
And then you have Illinois, 3rd and 13. You get the stop. Shaquan Loyal almost gets the interception. It doesn't work out, but it's fine because you get the stop. Illinois is facing 4th and 13, a 58-yard field goal with 14 seconds to play. There's no way you blow this one, right? There's just no way. And then obviously things happen the way they happen. It's incredible how often the defense has killed Rutgers this season. If you asked me to bet that before the season, I would never say that. And I would say it's the reason why the season is going the way it is.
No question. All right, let's wrap up football. If you folks got some sleep last night, I hope you can take a nap this afternoon. It's nice out there. I know I'm going to need one. Do basketball really quick. There's a game today. Obviously, in a couple hours, we are recording this. We will not know the outcome of the Kennesaw State game here until many of you listen to it. I'm worried about it. I'm just looking at the scores. I've not seen a minute of Kennesaw State. They score a lot of points. Rutgers has allowed teams to score a lot of points that the next week, like Rutgers gives up 70 and the next week a team scores 38. I don't know. I don't know if I should be worried about this game. We're not going to talk about it. We'll see what happens. But it's a trap game before what's going to be a really exciting week in Vegas, Brian. And I think that this is the opportunity. This is the event that you get to play in, the spotlight on you. And not just, this is what's interesting to me about this event. You're not just going there like, oh, Rutgers is like, tagging along. They're in this thing. You're in it. You're the marquee teams. People want to see your freshmen play on the stage. You're the Duke here. I get this an exaggeration, but you know what I'm talking about. You're the team. That's pretty cool.
Very cool. Very unique position for Rutgers. Mm-hmm. And it's because, like you said, those two guys, the Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, who are the most influential Rutgers athletes ever, right? I don't think that's in dispute. This Rutgers is on the big boys table for once. For the first time, Rutgers is in the mix of all these big boys. A lot of fun storylines going into this one. Rutgers is playing Notre Dame. They'll play Matt Alaco, a guy they recruited out of the portal, former roommate of Zach Martini, who tried to recruit him to Rutgers. But when your grandfather is the quarterback of a national championship winning Notre Dame team, it's hard not to play and root for the Irish. So Matt Alaco goes there. That'll be a fun matchup. Alabama, you'll see a very familiar face, Cliff Omori at center, and he'll go against one of the big storylines with this Rutgers team. They're struggling centers. That will be a fascinating matchup. And then obviously there's Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey taking over Las Vegas. Rutgers going down the strip, and we'll see. It could be a game that either changes our perception of the ceiling for this team. If they, beat Alabama somehow, or if they beat Notre Dame pretty good, then you could start feeding into the really high expectations. If you get absolutely whooped by Alabama, which is possible, they put up 100 points on Illinois, then you start to tamper some expectations a little bit, I would say. Before going to Vegas, to your point, Steve, I had not done a second of Illinois research on Kennesaw State. I just went on their KenPom page. They are number 4 in the country in 3-point shooting percentage, 45.8%. What does Rutgers not do well in the first 4 games of the season? They cannot guard the perimeter. And you're telling me that little bandbox holds 2,500 people? Most of them are going to be rooting for Ace Bailey.
Exactly.
But man,
a lot of pressure on 18-year-old Ace Bailey. I know. Woo.
Those Owls start hitting those threes, and those fans start going a little crazy, and the pressure mounts on these 5-star freshmen and all the other players around them that have never played a close game together. I don't know. It could get really interesting. So this will be a really important and telling week for the Rutgers basketball program.
You watch that. I'm going to be watching Tommy DeVito lace up the Buccaneers. Looking forward to the trip. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for all the reasons we stated. And unprecedented kind of thing, and then the event itself is the NIL aspect of this makes it a very interesting thing. The Vegas aspect of this makes it a very interesting thing. Me at the craps table at the MGM at 2 a.m. with Fonseca rolling numbers. We're going to be shooting some numbers, man. That's that makes it an interesting thing. Pat, what are you going to do?
I'll be at Michigan State holding things together.
Yeah.
I'll be celebrating Thanksgiving. I'll be hanging Christmas lights.
There you go.
But I guess the big picture thing for me is that Rutgers wanted a seat at the table and finally got it. After building this program up for 8 years under Steve Peichel, this is the moment that you kind of wait for. And this should be a preview of what you would expect in March when you're playing great teams and a great competition. And this is a preview of that. So I think big picture is just the assessment aspect of it, like Brian said, and at the micro level, the really interesting storylines that are just very juicy.
Me and Politi are going to be cashing in our thousands of dollars in winnings, and Pat's going to be walking his way over to the Michigan State press box with his 1 meal ticket.
Yeah.
And say what you will about Rutgers athletics budget. Michigan State gives every writer 1 meal ticket. And if you want, I learned this weekend, if you want mustard, that'll be an extra quarter, pal. Talk about cheapskates. My goodness.
Wow. That's something. Yeah. And this is again, Fooch bringing this up. We got to bring it back to Fooch for raving about the press box meal here in Piscataway with the knowledge that he's going to that bad meal. You dipping the grilled cheese into tomato soup. Things were really looking up when we arrived at the stadium. Nice day, tomato soup, grilled cheese, dipping. My new best friend, the Bull Scout from Citrus Bowl. We were like a happy group for the game. Okay, so the game lasted like 7.5 hours, but until the final 4 seconds. Pretty good. Pretty good.
The vibes were immaculate. All-time high vibes.
Oh, anyway, the vibes have cooled.
Also, now that you mentioned it, sorry, really quick. I'm going to extend this pod the way that Peacock extended that game. 4 hours and 10 minutes on a streaming service. It's not TV. It's a streaming service. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I don't care how many guys were injured. I don't care if the entire roster was down for half an hour. 4 hours is an abomination.
That had to be a big part of the injuries. Had to be
absolutely.
I mean, that was insane.
And the penalties. There were 1,000 penalties.
Right.
Yes,
and injuries.
There were 1,000 media timeouts. There were 5 minutes long. Why? Why are there 5 minute media timeouts? Why?
Because of the buffering. Was it was slow because I didn't watch it, but everyone get the complaints.
It was a disaster.
Yeah,
it was a disaster from that aspect.
Like the Tyson
ruined
fight.
my flow as a sports writer because I watched the game on my iPad and get the replays, but it was 3 plays behind.
Just a disaster. And I do want to say this because I did trash fans on our post-game video saying that everyone was leaving the stadium early, but then I realized the game was 4 hours long and there were 34-mile-per-hour winds.
Right. It was cold.
I would probably leave too.
Yeah. Can't blame people. Well, I can, but I don't. I'm not going to.
Also, and stop on top of it. Stop with the make some noise and the horn and all the 1,000 noise pollution things. I can't take it anymore. Someone raised, Max Shiner from the RD Screw Pod raised an interesting theory on Twitter. He said he thinks Greg does this because it's distracting to the other teams. He doesn't care about the game day ambiance environment because he thinks it gives him an edge. It distracts teams and it's like a psychological warfare thing. I buy into it because it destroys my psychological warfare in the press box. I can't imagine on the field where you actually hear it.
Maybe that's what he's doing instead of he's hitting the button to make some noise instead of game situations. Yeah, that's it. All right, let's end there, fellas. Good show. We'll be back. I don't know when. Hopefully from Vegas. We're going to try to do technology and Thanksgiving holiday. If not, we'll be back soon. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.